Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I want to challenge another major leadership myth. And that myth is this: that most executives don't have a time management problem. Now, don't get me wrong, time management matters, but many leaders are not actually struggling because they lack time. They're struggling because they lack capacity. And those are two very different things. Because when cognitive capacity declines, everything takes longer. Decision making slows down, your focus decreases, your emotional regulation weakens, and strategic thinking becomes a lot harder. And leaders often misinterpret that experience as poor productivity. So they respond by adding more systems, more apps, more planners, more optimization tools. But no productivity system can compensate for an exhausted brain indefinitely. And this is where leadership culture becomes dangerous. We've normalized operating in chronic overload. We've normalized back-to-back meetings, constant notifications, constant urgency, constant accessibility. And then we wonder why executives struggle to think strategically. But strategic thinking requires cognitive bandwidth, and cognitive bandwidth requires recovery. You cannot continue biology really does not work that way. And this is why so many leaders feel mentally fragmented. Their nervous systems never fully downshift. Their brains never fully recover. And over time, leadership becomes reactive instead of intentional. This is one of the biggest hidden costs of modern executive culture. Not simply stress, but sustained cognitive fragmentation. And unfortunately, high performers are often the most vulnerable because high performers can tolerate overload longer than most people. They will continue to function, produce, and continue compensating. But internally, their clarity slowly declines. And eventually, their calendar starts controlling them instead of the other way around. Now, here's the important distinction: a full calendar does not automatically create poor leadership, but a depleted nervous system, that does affect leadership quality because every decision flows through the brain that makes it. So if your physiology is unstable, your cognition becomes less stable. And this is why longevity must become part of the leadership conversation. Because longevity is not simply about living longer, it's about preserving executive function longer, protecting your attention, clarity, judgment, and emotional regulation. Those are all leadership assets. And leaders who protect those assets consistently tend to outperform over the long term. This is not because they work less, but because they think better. That's the real advantage. I'm going to insert a personal story here. I notice that when I am efforting and hustling and I'm operating in urgency, it's like my nervous system is dysregulated, my cortisol is up. I just don't have the thinking bandwidth. I promise you, the first thing I look at as a high performing leader is time. Oh my gosh, I can't afford to be slowing down here. I got things on my calendar, my schedule, and I will stop and take a cognitive reset. I usually schedule those in, but life lives. And sometimes I have to incorporate an unscheduled cognitive reset. And I do exactly that. And I tell you what, when I come back, my productivity is through the roof. It's like I drank 2 Red Bulls. I'm just stable. I'm even. I'm able to function better. And this is why it's important that we protect our decision quality and our cognitive bandwidth like the strategic asset that it is. So recovery becomes strategic infrastructure. Recovery creates bandwidth, what I was just saying. Recovery restores attention. Recovery improves executive function. Recovery improves emotional regulation. Recovery protects decision quality. This is not wellness fluff. This is leadership maintenance. And leaders who fail to understand this eventually start operating from urgency instead of strategy. And I'm raising my hand because I'm one of those leaders. I was operating in constant urgency. But once I started instituting cognitive resets, once I start putting a pause in my day, the results were like night and day. And the leaders I work with, they've experienced the same thing. So when you fail to have your cognitive resets and you're operating from urgency instead of strategy, everything becomes reactive. Everything feels rushed. Everything feels mentally heavy. Not necessarily because they become less capable, but because your cognitive systems become overloaded. And you cannot sustainably lead from chronic overload forever. It's not going to work. Eventually, the quality of your thinking declines. And this is why I encourage leaders to stop asking, how do I fit more into my day? I was one of those leaders. I advise myself first. So I know this works and I advise others and I've seen the results. I had to stop that. And it's still in me. I'm very type A. So I want to do things. I fill out my calendars to the gilt. I have, just in case I have time, like I built out my schedule 110% max capacity, but I don't. So I stopped asking myself this question. I don't ask, how do I fit more into my day? I start asking myself, what protects my ability to think clearly throughout the day? That's a better leadership question. Because the highest performing leaders are rarely the ones squeezing the most into every hour. They're the ones protecting the quality of cognition inside those hours. That's what compounds. And that is why longevity is a leadership advantage. I want to thank you all for being here today. If this conversation resonated with you, DM me the word capacity or connect with me directly. On my LinkedIn feature section, you will see the executive capacity audit and also a link to book an executive strategy call. I want you to know that leadership is not just about managing your time. It's about protecting the human system responsible for every critical decision you make. I will see you guys tomorrow at 12:30.